US History and AP US Government teacher here at Massac High School. Along with being a class advisor to the class of 2026, I am also the faculty advisor to the Massac chapter of Students Against Drunk Driving. I am pleased to introduce this year's forum on underage drinking. A few notes about our program. All freshmen are required to watch this video with a parent or guardian, and all students and parents must complete the associated survey in its entirety after watching this video. There are many adult professionals in this video who have an important message for both students and parents. All of this pertains to teenage use of substances, not just alcohol. There are healthcare professionals, lawyers, educators, and others in this video who want you to consider the repercussions of alcohol and other substance use. This program was put together simply because we love our students. We want them to make good decisions here at Massac and beyond. Everyone will be faced with decision-making in life as it pertains to substances. We want you all to have the facts and decide accordingly. We believe you will find this program to be interesting, useful, and perhaps a bit eye-opening. Students who are interested in joining Massac's chapter of Students Against Drunk Driving should attend an informational meeting during the flex period on Monday, November 14th in E109. Finally, our local prevention council in Monroe, ADAM, or Alcohol and Drug Awareness in Monroe, sponsors this event every year. ADAM also has resources available to parents and students beyond this event. Any parent or students who need information and other resources regarding substance abuse may go to their website, adamofmonroect.wordpress.com. On behalf of ADAM, Monroe administrators, teachers, and support staff, we thank you for watching and your kind attention to such an important matter.
Hi, good afternoon, Monroe families and freshmen. I'm Detective Buckley. I'm the youth detective with the town of Monroe, the police department. I'm here to talk to you today a little bit about social hosting and what that is. So social hosting is a Connecticut general statute that involves permitting a minor to illegally possess alcohol on private or public property. And what that is knowingly, recklessly, or with negligence allowing that minor to consume alcohol on a property, whether you're there or not there. Essentially what happens with the law is it doesn't matter whether or not you actually provide the alcohol to the minor, but if there's a reasonable belief that you failed to stop any alcohol being consumed by the minor, it falls under the law for social hosting. So it is a misdemeanor, Class A misdemeanor crime, which is punishable up to 1 year in prison. If the minor that's consuming the alcohol is under the age of 16, it can be considered a felony, which is punishable up to a year in prison. So there are also civil liability issues that come along with it, meaning that a family can find that somebody allowed their minor to consume alcohol on the property and therefore suing them civilly as well. Some of the other things that we look at while we're doing these investigations are whether or not the host or the property owner should have believed that there may have been alcohol consumed on the property and failed to stop it. We do not have to prove that the adult actually provided the alcohol or actually knew that the alcohol was being consumed, but failed to stop it or failed to address the situation. Typically, the police department is notified of these investigations because something else happens. Normally, friends are not, ratting each other out that they didn't get to go to the party, or that they weren't invited, or something happened is usually the reason why the police department is contacted and told of an incident where social hosting was going on. So we do sometimes get notification while the party is actually in process, in which case we will go out and attempt to investigate based on the information that we have. One of the things that we do get often told is that there's a party going on, we're given limited information, and the person that wants to make the complaint is complaining anonymously. It does kind of tie our hands at the police department, allowing us to fully investigate to ensure that all of our kids are being safe. However, we will do the best that we can based on the information that's provided. One of the other things that the police department does to ensure that our teens are not getting a hold of alcohol is we do random compliance checks with our businesses in town with the assistance of the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Division here in the state of Connecticut. We do take complaints from parents and from others also. If they find that their teens are receiving alcohol from these different businesses, we will do investigations into those, and ultimately, if need be, the businesses can be fined and shut down. Some of the things that we're often asked of the police department is, what can I do to protect my kids from being involved with situations with social hosting or with minors drinking alcohol? And the number one thing I can tell you is just be open and have that conversation with your teen. Often teens get themselves into situations at parties and they don't go intending to drink alcohol. However, they feel I'm here, they get peer pressured into doing it and thinking that maybe you as a parent don't know that they're there, and if they call you and ask you for a ride, they're going to get in trouble for being there. All I ask is that you're open and honest with your kids and give them a way out. Many of these situations can be avoided by having a responsible parent or an older sibling that somebody can contact when they have a problem at a location, so they don't know when they have to get involved in consuming the alcohol. One of my other jobs besides investigating social hosting complaints is I'm also responsible for investigating child abuse and child sexual abuse. Unfortunately, a lot of these social hosting issues come along with child sexual abuse as well, which is how we get alerted to the parties and the social hosting environments that our teens are being put in. So we have motor vehicle accidents, we have sexual assaults, we have physical assaults and fights, as well as a lot of other medical emergencies that come out of these social hosting parties. And it does lead to a lot of additional civil liabilities for families and for property owners when these additional things happen. Some of the resources that are available at the police department, you can contact us at any point at any time if you have any questions or any concerns. My information will be provided at the end of this evening for anybody that has additional questions. We do ask that if you are going to call in complaints, that you do provide your contact information so that we can get a hold of you and make a full investigation as to a situation that occurs. As teens, we ask that you try to make responsible decisions. We know that it's not always easy. We know that poor decisions happen, but do your best to make responsible decisions and have that conversation with your parents ahead of time of what can you do if you're in a position where you don't want to be there, or you're someplace that maybe you're not supposed to be, but you need a way out and you need a way home. So have those contact information, have that keyword from mom or an older sibling or an aunt or an uncle of ways to get you out of that situation so that you're not forced to make a poor decision. I appreciate you guys' time for this evening and for this presentation. And again, if you ever have any questions or concerns, please don't hesitate to contact the Monroe Police Department. Thank you.
Addiction is a family disease. One person may use, but the whole family suffers. This is a quote I once read, and I am here today because my brother is a heroin addict. I grew up here in Monroe, and I still live here. Since I was in 8th grade at Jockey Hollow, I have seen firsthand what addiction does to someone and those surrounding them. My brother, who is only 2 years older than me, went to Massac. He was a rising baseball star, had a girlfriend, did well in school, and had many friends. Many would say he had it all. Then, in his junior year of high school, he went to a party and was offered to try something. That day, my brother became an addict. He quit the baseball team, got into fights at school, and barely made it to graduation. For me, the opiate epidemic started 21 years ago. Now reality hits here in Monroe. Since 2015, Monroe has suffered approximately 56 overdoses and has lost approximately 13 members of its community to the opiate epidemic. But let me be clear, these are only the reported overdoses. the ones which police and EMS responded to. How many families gave Narcan to their loved ones and never called for help? Of the approximately 13 deaths here in Monroe, more than 9 of the overdoses were fentanyl related. It's scary to think that the size of a grain of salt in the form of fentanyl is all it can take to kill you. Open your eyes and look around. Addiction is real and it does not discriminate. Now imagine seeing your close friend overdose, not breathing, and being tasked with trying to save their life. As you pump down on their chests, performing CPR, hoping you're doing it right, your friend's family is screaming and crying around you, telling you to save their child's life. You administer Narcan, dose after dose, doing CPR compressions in between, praying your friend will wake up, hoping you can save their life. After several rounds of CPR and several doses of Narcan, your friend is dead. You couldn't save them. Now, while standing on the front lawn at your friend's house, trying to catch your breath, you see a school bus pull up. Your friend, who just died, was a mother to an 8-year-old girl. You watch as Grandpa now gets down on his knees on the front lawn, embracing his granddaughter as she gets off the school bus, and witness him tell her, "Mommy is not coming home." That day, a friend died, a family lost their daughter, and a child no longer had a mother. As a police officer, I responded to this call. I was the first one on scene. I was the one pumping down on my friend's chest, and I was the one who witnessed my friend's father tell his granddaughter that her mommy was dead. My friend was my classmate, my best friend at Jockey Hollow, and someone I cherished. I pumped down on her chest, and I couldn't save her. I saw that child break down as her world crumbled around her. Now imagine if that was your friend, and you just witnessed me unable to save their life. Addiction is a family disease. One person may use, but the whole family suffers. Thank you for your time.
Hi there. I'd like to thank the Massac High School for inviting me to speak to the grade 9 population and their parents about substance abuse, particularly drinking and driving. My name is Ann Dyke, and I work at Yale New Haven Health, Bridgeport Hospital, as the Injury Prevention Coordinator. So the first slide, what I really wanted to bring up today was that I think people don't really realize that substances in general are harmful and that we all think differently when we're under the influence of substances. And in particular, I was asked to really focus on the alcohol component in teens and how it affects them. But no doubt, anything that you take in your body, whether it be a Tylenol, whether it be aspirin, whether it be ibuprofen, whatever you take into your body, it alters the chemistry and it alters how we think. And again, particular alcohol. So I wanted to give you a visual on how much alcohol is in a water bottle. And I think everyone's very familiar with how much water we should drink daily. On average, we should probably drink about 3 or 4 of these water bottles that's on the screen here. But when we measure out 1.5 ounces of alcohol, which is a typical measured drink of whether it be liquor or whether it be a shot, it's usually about 1.5 ounces or 1.5 fluid ounces. If we were to put those in a water bottle, that equates to 11.27 drinks. So when we go out and we've got our water bottle and it's fun and games to fill the water bottle full of liquor, that's how many drinks you're putting into your body. When you land in the hospital, we measure your blood alcohol. And to get to what we call a 100 blood level alcohol, that's approximately 5 to 6 beers. If I were to give you that many drinks, 5 or 6 shots of liquor, imagine 10 shots of liquor, your blood alcohol would be at 200. And at 15 shots of liquor, your blood alcohol would be at 300. Now, personally, if I drank 5 shots of alcohol, I would be out cold. It would just do that to me. And a typical man drinking that, a heavy man drinking 5 shots of alcohol, he would be inebriated. So I really wanted to give the picture of how much alcohol is out there. So there are myths that people believe. I've been told many times, and I've seen it on TV, if you drink a lot of coffee or you have a cold shower and you're out drinking, you sober up really quickly. Absolute myth. There's nothing that's going to sober you up more than time. And I've heard the myth too, that people get their stomachs pumped in the emergency department. I can tell you 100%, we do never, ever, ever pump a stomach for alcohol poisoning. I've never seen it, and I've been a nurse for 33 years. So we cannot rid your body of the alcohol. What we can do is support you and give you some time to recover, but for us to get rid of the alcohol is almost impossible. The second myth is if you eat before you go out drinking, it's going to be better. Answer is no. So I've heard this many, many times from either my boys or my husband. Well, let's have a big meal if we're going to have a couple of drinks because it'll absorb the alcohol. Absolute myth. Does not do that at all. Alcohol gets into the bloodstream as quick as it does, even with a belly full of food. So when we get ready for a trauma, I carry a pager 24/7, and so are trauma surgeons and our trauma nurses. When we get ready for a code, we get advance notice that you're coming in. And the reason for that is that we want to be as prepared as possible for any trauma that comes. So our pagers will go off like this: trauma code, head injury, ETA 8 minutes. And we don't get told this is a drunk driver. We have no idea what's coming in. We just know head injury. So when we get ready for this, the first room that you'll enter is this. So this is our trauma room, where if you look around the room, it's pretty pristine, very, very clean looking. And you'll see a blood warmer on the far left. You'll see IV carts in the middle. You'll see more IV carts, procedure carts, a monitor, and then the bed in the middle. You'll see the blue box on the ground. That's the blue tiles. And those blue tiles are where all the trauma members stand that are of importance in that particular trauma. So there may be 4 or 5 trauma people, including surgeons, residents, nurses. And when we get ready for you, it's going to look like this when you come in. This is a simulation. So when we are preparing for traumas, we don't just know how to do everything, we prepare monthly. Now this was before COVID, just to give everyone context, because we're not wearing masks. But we did this monthly with our residents, where everyone stood around, we brought a mannequin in, and we usually ran a trauma of someone that was drinking or was on some form of substance abuse. And you can see the white coats, some of them are residents. My boss is on the far right in the white coat, he's our chief. And our director of trauma is in the white coat facing away from the camera. So everyone there is important, and you'll notice that there are people closer to the patient. Those are people in the blue box that I mentioned. We jack the room up about 20 degrees because we want you warm when you come in. And you'll notice that the mannequin is naked, because one of the first things we do is we take trauma scissors and we cut off everything so that we can see what we're up to and we can see how well the patient is. So imagine having yourself in this situation where you have to come in under a trauma and we throw you on this bed. It's scary. If you're conscious, people are crying, they're screaming, and we understand that because we know how scared you are, how cold you are in that moment, and you want your mom and your dad if you're a teen or even just a little guy, and you want your mom and dad if you're in your 50s. It doesn't matter. It's a scary spot. So this is the trauma room after one of our trauma victims was in CT. So I was walking backwards to get ready to take the patient to have a head scan, and what we do is we do a full body scan when people are, midway through their trauma. And I was walking out of the room and I just took a picture. This is actually not big a mess at all. And you'll notice there's blood on the floor, there's gloves, there's tourniquets, there's abdominal padding. And this is actually what I would call clean trauma, because when we're in that room, we really, it is just all out warfare trying to get you living. And that's what it looks like. And I know it looks a little chaotic, but believe me, it can get much, much worse. So I know this is a very short presentation, and I think that one of the things that I wanted to impart today was my own story, and it's not necessarily a story of tragedy, we're very lucky, but my own story. So I'm Canadian and I live in Northern Canada, or I lived in Northern Canada, and I have many brothers and sisters that are much older than I am. And my friends and I used to go out to the local hotel across the border, because drinking age was 18 when I was a teen. And we would go across the border and we'd always have a designated driver. And my brother, before I left one night, said, "Hey, you know what? If you need me, give me a call. I'll come and get you." And I did have to call him that night. I'm sure it wasn't a very pretty thing for him to hear at 2 o'clock in the morning, his baby sister calling and saying, "Could you come and get me?" Because it wasn't pretty for him, but he came and he got me. And my husband and I decided that we were going to do the same thing with our children. no matter what happens, no matter where you are, we have a policy. No questions asked. We will come and get you. Because there are times, and there will be times in your life, that you have a drink in front of you and there's people teasing you and maybe you want to have that drink but you know better, but you have that drink anyway. And I want to give my own story away so that you know that you should have a plan before you go out. And our plan in our house was, you're caught, call me, no questions asked. Sure enough, 1 o'clock in the morning, my phone rings and it was my son. And I heard the slurred words that I said many, many years ago, could you come and get me? Could you come and get me? And the answer was absolutely. Get in the car, we'll go get you, we'll go get your friends, everyone goes home, no questions asked. So when I'm talking about, my final words, have a plan your exit, use humor to get out of a situation. I've done that many, many times. Make an excuse, have a friend along, suggest an alternative, delay your decision if people are trying to get you to do something or you're doing something, because your judgment is, you think at that moment, I'm fine. I can't tell you in 33 years how many times I've heard the words, I'm fine. I was fine when I got in the car. I didn't have that much. I only had 2 beers. I've heard it. I wouldn't say I've heard it all, because that's arrogant to say, oh, she knows it all. I do not. But what I do know is that if you have a plan to get home safely, then use it. And you will be forever grateful for it, because it's the next morning that you'll sit there and say, I'm glad I did that. Because it won't be in that moment. And I've pulled teens out of, off stretchers that had 2 drinks, according to their friends. And when we looked at their blood alcohol level, it was really 10 drinks. Because as you get drinking, you forget how much you've had. So I just want to give those words to everyone here as a trauma nurse and as a nurse for many, many years. Have that plan and be safe, and have that chat with your mom and dad. Have that chat with your friends to get out safely.
Hi everyone, my name is Nicole Wachowski and I'm the Youth Program Manager at Mothers Against Drunk Driving here in Connecticut. At MAD, our mission is to prevent underage drinking and end drunk driving and drugged driving. In a moment, you're going to hear the story of Aaron and Larry. We hope that this helps to understand what the dangers of impaired driving are and reminds you to never get in the car with an impaired driver. It doesn't matter whether that person is an adult, a peer, a family member, or a friend. It's never safe to drive with an impaired driver.
And I am a mother, and I'm a mother against drunk and drugged and distracted driving. And this is a totally preventable event. If you think about it, this doesn't have to happen. And we hope that that this experience will make you pause a little bit to maybe think before getting behind the wheel of a vehicle. Just have a plan so that there are no more victims, just like our shirt says. That's the message of MAD. No more victims, whether it's you or someone you love. So it's been about 19 months that our 23-year-old son, Kyle, was murdered in a catastrophic, horrific, and fiery car crash caused by a drugged and reckless driver. On a Tuesday evening at 5:50 in the afternoon, Kyle was on a Monday chore of just going to pick up dinner for him and his girlfriend. He had just worked out. He was traveling on a rural roadway when the unimaginable happened.
The car is blowing up. There's a dead person on the side of the road. Bad head-on collision.
So, like we said, she was doing between 110 and 116 miles an hour. Never touched the brakes. She was completely on his side of the road. That road there was a blind curve. It was all overgrown. So let's be real. Kyle was probably doing 55, 60. I'm not a dumb father. He was in Erin's 2012 Jeep Wrangler 4-door. She was in a 2018 Chevy Malibu. The Malibu weighed 750 pounds less than my Jeep. When she hit the Jeep, I'm going to use the baseball analogy, like somebody throwing a fastball down the middle. She hit Kyle so hard it stopped my Jeep in its tracks and drove it back 29 feet backwards before it became airborne after doing a 180-degree turn up over the guardrail without ever touching the guardrail. Did a half a barrel roll and landed on its side in the woods. There was trees in the woods that held it from sliding down an embankment that's a 30-degree embankment. When the police officer got there, he climbed up on top of the passenger side of the car. He ran around, climbed up on the passenger side, looked down. Kyle was alive and breathing. It pushed the A-pillar back on the car. That's where your door bolts to the front. It pushed the A-pillar back 1.5 feet. Trapping him in the car. The car was on fire. There was people that were bystanders that were there that were trying to throw dirt and anything they could to put the fire out in the car. There was a plumber that pulled up in his truck and started handing fire extinguishers to people that he had in the truck. He started throwing out fire extinguishers, every single one he had in the truck. There was a pile of about 8 of them there. The vehicle ended up rolling onto its roof. When the police officer was on top of it, he just barely got out of the way. They cut the seat belt and tried to pull Kyle out. They couldn't get him out. The fire got so big that they had to pull the police officer out of the car because the police officer didn't want to leave him. Three tanker trucks of water. So think about a swimming pool, in-ground swimming pool, 10,000 gallons about. 3 tankers of water to put the fire out, plus aviation foam. Kyle was alive. When we got the autopsy report, Kyle died of blunt force trauma to the head, torso, and neck. He had aviation foam in his lungs. You don't get aviation foam in your lungs unless you're breathing.
And smoke inhalation.
And smoke, yeah. So you're breathing. He was burnt beyond recognition. My daughter had to send dental records for him to be identified.
Because this is preventable. And this is the message of MAD. Make good choices. We tell that kids every day, make good choices. Make good choices out at recess. Make sure you keep your hands to yourself, all those things. Same with you. Make good choices. No more victims. Because we all share these roadways together, right? There are lots of roadways, and you see distracted drivers all the time. You don't know if they're drunk, you don't know if they're drugged, you don't know if they're on their cell phones. So be careful and make good choices. The 29-year-old that had killed our son had made multiple mistakes over an 11-year period. She was arrested multiple times, and she even spent time in prison. When she got out of prison, she was dismissed, so she wasn't on parole. No one was checking in with her. She became hooked on drugs in prison. She was driving highly impaired with extreme levels of PCP and marijuana, driving erratically with high speeds. She decided to take a 40-year-old passenger along with her who was also on PCP. They were in the ride of a lifetime. They used this vehicle as a lethal weapon, deadlier than any handgun, and destroyed our son's body. Driving over 110 to 116 miles an hour in the wrong lane on a rural roadway. We couldn't say goodbye to our son. We weren't even in the country when this happened. All we could do was to lay his beloved Jason Varitek Red Sox shirt in his casket.
We hope that hearing Aaron and Larry's tragic story reminds you of the dangers of impaired driving. We also want to remind you here at MAD that underage drinking and drug use is not only dangerous, it's also against the law. Thank you for your time.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. In the age of COVID, I have no idea when everyone is going to be seeing this, so I'll cover all the bases today. My name is Tom Tesoro. I'm an attorney by practice, and I'm here to speak to you about the perils of hosting an underage drinking party. Now, the title of this is called People Who Host the Most Lose the Most. And you can probably see the slide up there at this point in time. And you see two things on there, a shack and people behind bars. I put these things up there typically because I want people to understand. If you believe this law does not apply to you, there's an excellent chance you'll end up living in a shack or a guest of the state because of the consequences of hosting an underage drinking forum. Now, normally, I would get up in front of an audience, I'd have you take a look at me, I'd talk to me of being a short, fat, bald teddy bear. And that, of course, is something that I would normally show you, but today I'm seated at a desk, so it would be a more muted subject matter today, with the same emphasis. Thank you, MASIC, once again, for allowing me to speak at the MASIC Forum on Underage Drinking and Substance Abuse. So let's begin with our slideshow, but first I'll speak to the children out there, or should I say the students, the young adults out there. You're bombarded constantly with images of people having a good time. My first slide, you can see some examples of people at a party, drinking and enjoying themselves. My next slide is the same thing. Again, enjoying yourself and having a good time. What they don't show you is what happens next. So my next slide, you can see a young lady passed out with a drink in front of her. When you put yourself in this position, you open yourself up to sexual assault, to robbery, and worse than that. Don't put yourself in this position. But lest I be accused of being a sexist and picking only on the young ladies, my next slide, you can see two gentlemen enjoying a nap with each other in a pool of their own vomit. Now, that being disgusting enough, you too are now subject to robbery, you're subject to assault, and you're subject to arrest. These are not the kinds of things that you want to have happen to you. This is the dark side of it. And my last side is a gentleman who's inspecting a toilet bowl. This was in a public facility. It's disgusting enough to think about, but think about if your parents find you in this situation in your home. Trust me, they will not be pleased, and there will be consequences. So think before you act, young people, because in this particular case, the consequences are severe. Now, having said all that, I'm going to move now to my other slides and take the pictures to the side. The first one, we talk about the collateral consequences of this. So parents, please understand, this is a nightmare for you if you do this. And I understand the reasoning why you do it. You want to be sure that you control the situation. But trust me, you can't. There's case after case after case of parents with the very best of intentions ending up with dire consequences. For example, in this local area here, a family did everything they could to make sure that the guests at their house were safe. They collected all the car keys when people came in, and they made sure that before anyone left, that they were checked to make sure that they were capable of driving. Well, what happens? The young people in the audience, they're very, very clever. And what they did was bring another set of keys, stuck it in their sock, walked in, snuck out, went driving, and crashed that car, causing tremendous amount of property damage, and not to mention bodily injury. And who's responsible for this? The social host committed an underage drinking party on their premises. And you don't even have to be there. So know this, children. You don't even have to be there, okay? Your parents don't have to be there for them to be held liable. Their life savings could be taken away. The college fund for you could be lost. The wedding fund for young Tina, gone. All of these things because you acted in a way which put yourself in a position of peril or put your parents in a position of peril. Your parents love you. They work very hard to have you in a wonderful community like Monroe and in a great school like Massac. Don't blow the opportunities they're giving you just for a quick beer. It's a mistake on so many levels. Legally, I will tell you, and you can see the slide, and all the kinds of things that could happen to you from a legal standpoint, but understand this. It ruins families, it ruins friendships, and it ruins dreams. Let me give you some examples. There was an instance not that far away where a young man, was at his family's house and they were drinking. He was underage. He decided to go out for a drive. Left his family's house around the holidays, great celebration, and wrecked his car. There was a passenger in his car who was killed. The young man spent time in prison, and think about how horrible it really was when you discover that the passenger was his brother. The family was devastated. Don't let this happen to you. Friendships are ruined. There was a case, again in the very local area, where a young man was at an underage drinking party, went out, took a drive, and injured his passenger. The passenger wasn't killed, but was crippled. And that family, who were very close to the family host of the party, became mortal enemies, to the point where the young man who did the driving was applying to colleges, and they found out where the person applied and wrote letters about the situation that occurred. That's the kind of horrors that could occur. Now, at this point in time, I generally ask the people in the audience to raise their hands if they're a student athlete. The hands go up. Then I ask, who here believes they could get a scholarship? And all the parents' hands go up. Now, whether you get a scholarship or not, let me tell you a story what happened. A family hosted an underage drinking party. At the party was a young athlete. This young athlete had a Division I scholarship on the horizon, was going to go to 4-year college free. He was drinking, got a little loaded up, fell down the stairs, wrecked his knee, and his dreams of playing D1 baseball were gone. He did go to college, however, free, because the underage drinking host of that party paid that bill. That is a total and absolute disaster. That young man's dreams are lost, and that family has a financial impact. These are horror stories, but they happen. And if you think they can't happen to you, they will. And you say, well, wait, I don't have a lot of assets. Well, you have a job. They can go after your job. They can go after your wages. They can go after your home. It's a total and absolute mess. You don't need this. You don't want it. Don't do it. And see, if you think to yourself you have insurance, and this is my last slide, sometimes there's no coverage for something like this. Your rates go through the roof, or you don't have any insurance at all. No good comes from hosting an underage drinking party. So let me just say this. At this point in time, normally I'd stand up, I'd walk out to the audience, and I'd pick a family. And I'd say to the young person, what do lawyers like the most? And inevitably they say money. Well, they're right. But they also like one other thing, and that's a contract. So I'm going to ask everyone who's listening to this, students and parents alike, to make a binding contract. Not next week, not tomorrow. Today, do it. And here's the deal. Students, if you find yourself in a situation where you're at an underage drinking party and you're not comfortable, call your parents. Please call your parents. Parents, when they call, go pick them up, no consequences. That's the contract. Call, no consequences. To the students, believe me, your parents would rather hear a call from you than a call from the doctor or the police that something horrible has happened. So make that contract today. Make that contract tonight. And never, ever host an underage drinking party. It's a catastrophe waiting to happen, and the good people of Massac High School don't need that kind of grief. Once again, I thank you for your time and attention. I hope this wasn't very boring for you. And next year, hope to do it live, on stage, with a short, fat, bald teddy bear. Remember, fear the teddy bear. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jessica Champagne. I am the social worker for the school district, and I also work as one of the social workers with the Department of Social Services here in town. So I'll talk about that role a little bit more later. But the focus today is to try and come up with strategies that parents and guardians can use to have some of the difficult conversations about underage drinking, and to build a type of relationship where teens can feel open about things even when they make a mistake or have a fumble along the way. So how can we develop some open communication across the board? So we'll start here. So, dear child, as long as you live in this house, you will follow the rules. When you have your own house, you can make your own rules. We are not pals. I am your parent. This is 100 times more than what a pal is. Whatever I ask you to do is motivated by love. So I share this not to give a sort of endorsement to being this really authoritative parent, but I think the important part is understanding that the role of a parent or guardian in a child's life is different. It's a different kind of relationship than any other type of relationship a child has. So it's not easy, and there's going to be things that you don't have the playbook for, so you're kind of figuring it out as you go along. But understand that they need to hear from you on this topic because it's so vital, and there's no one else that's going to have the same type of influence because there's no other type of relationship similar. Even other supportive adults are not the same as a child's parent. So before we talk about protective factors, I want to talk about messages that get sent overall. Like, we live in a society where messages are sent through social media, the TV that we watch, news. We get messages on all type of things, but in particular, if we look at how underage drinking is portrayed, especially in like TV shows where they have actors who are already like 25 years old playing teenagers, it's already so unrealistic, but these are the messages that are sent out. So we want to look at what protective factors can help a student when they're struggling with working through some of these decisions. These protective factors aren't like a recipe where if you do all of these things, then you're going to have a child who doesn't use alcohol or drugs at all. It just doesn't work like that. But I think these are things that we have control over that you can look towards to say, okay, these are going to lessen the chances or build some resilience for my child to be able to come back to peer pressure or things like that with. These are going to be some resiliency factors. So having a strong bond with you, having parents who provide encouragement and emotional support, have parents who are involved in their activities. This is probably the biggest one that I hear a lot from teens. So feeling like their concerns are going to be productive when they discuss them with their parents. So what that means is a lot of teens will say that they feel judged by their parents, or that their parents aren't really listening, that they're not hearing them. So if you can find a way to work through those ones, and that is the framework that you build upon, that would be the one that I think is most important. Having parents who set clear expectations and reasonable limits. And then this seems like a pretty straightforward one, but it bears repeating. So a student should be expected by parents not to use substances. If you haven't made that clear, make it clear. Experiencing reasonable consequences for violating parent rules. The reasonable part is what I want to emphasize here. So it's not that, they make a mistake, they disobey your expectations or whatever the case may be, and their life is over. You want to have consequences that are going to be time limited, that are going to be, in relation to the infraction. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later. Having parents who are good role models of healthy behavior. We'll talk about that for sure a little bit later too. Providing family structure or weekly routines and family activities together. So eating dinner together as a family is a good example of having some type of structure and routine. And then having parents who provide close supervision and monitoring. It doesn't necessarily mean you take their phone every night and see who they're talking to or things like that. It just more so means that when they go out, you know where they're going. When they are talking to friends, you generally have an idea of who their friend group is, that sort of thing. Open communication. So again, not like a complete recipe, but I think these are 3 little areas that you can really build upon, and it'll help create that transparency and that relatedness that we're looking for here. So active listening is all those nonverbal things that you do when you're listening. It's also some of the verbal check-ins, really making sure that they know that you're following along with what they're saying. The biggest piece here is that there's going to be lots of opportunities for you to practice active listening with your teen prior to them having a conversation about a difficult decision they had to make, or maybe that they did go to someone's house and drink and they want to come forward with that. You have to prove that you're there and actively listening for all those other things. The fights with their friends, the trouble on social media, the difficulties in class, the funny thing that happened when they were at the mall, if we were still really regularly going places like that. But I mean, you have to show that you're there and you're listening all those other times. Asking open-ended questions. So sometimes talking to teens, especially when they don't want to talk, is not always the easiest thing. So being mindful of asking open-ended questions really expands the opportunity for the conversation to continue. Otherwise, close-ended questions just get answered with yes or no or shoulder shrug. So we want to give more opportunities to ask open-ended questions. And controlling your emotions or judgments. If they feel like they're going to say something and it's going to become this huge blowout, they're probably not going to say it. I'm not saying that you're not entitled to your reactions. There are things that teens are going to say that will totally send you over the moon, I'm sure. But we want to give you the space to be able to process your own emotions so that you can have a thoughtful response instead of feeling like that soda bottle that's all shooken up and then it explodes and you have a lot of cleanup to do. Sorry, went a little dark there. So having clear expectations and reasonable limits, this is just as vital. So if they think that they're going to have, make a mistake or make a decision that's not as thought out or make a poor decision overall, if they're afraid of what the expectations and the consequences should really be, they might not be as forthcoming with what's going on when they are really struggling with trying to figure out the way to move forward. So don't assume, again, that your child knows what the expectations are. Be very clear. It needs to be as simple as possible. Consequences need to be related to what happened. You also need to follow through. So you can't have consequences that are going to be difficult to actually enact. Like before, when we would actually have vacations and things, I'd hear a lot of parents sometimes say like they weren't going to take the child on the trip to wherever. And it's like, is that really something that you would feel comfortable taking away? And if not, then you can't use it as a threat. The other side of that is also that you really need to follow through on everything consistently. So if they get in trouble one time but not the other, it's going to be hard to stand your ground when you really need to follow through. Avoid arguing about non-negotiable items. It's very easy to get in power struggles about things. There's going to be some things in life that are literally non-negotiable. Like that's just how it is. Those are the expectations. Then there's a whole other set of negotiable items, which are the sorts of things like if you say you should do your homework as soon as you get home because we have a really busy night, you have all these activities or whatever the case may be. If the child doesn't do their homework right when they get home and then they're either staying up late at night to try and finish it before the next day, or they're not able to finish it at all or have anything to turn in. Those are some like negotiable things where you can offer guidance, but it's really a chance for the child to practice their own independence and taking responsibility and things like that. Those things are things that you could bounce back from. If they really mess up, then the next day they have another chance to do their homework. They might be able to advocate for themselves to get extra time to turn something in. It's not the end of the world if those things don't work out the way that they plan. So make sure that you can identify opportunities like that and really give your child the chance to figure those things out on your own. The other part, where they're non-negotiable, they're harder to bounce back from, they could have really dire consequences if it's not followed through. Those are the things that you don't want to get in the power struggle about. That's just how it is. Those are things that are immovable expectations. And then expressing appreciation when rules are followed or when they serve their consequence. I think that's equally as important. So parenting the social scene. So this is more like if your child is going somewhere. So know where your kid's going and who they're with, setting expectations for time limits. I've seen a few different versions of stories like this circulate on social media. So establishing a safe word where they can leave the situation, no questions asked. Maybe there were things that you would not approve of going on, but if they need an escape, they know that you're going to be able to be there to make sure that they get home safely. I think a lot of the stories that we hear are sometimes like when someone goes to someone's house, they end up drinking, they don't want to drive drunk home, so they call their parent, that you use the safe word, and then the parent comes and picks them up. It doesn't mean that you're condoning what happened, but it means that you're offering a place to make sure that the child's safety is taking first, it's the first priority versus issuing a consequence for what went on. There's always time to talk about it. Doesn't mean that you're not going to have the conversation later, but it means that you're getting them out of a sticky situation where they could make even poorer choices without any judgment in the moment. Talking to other parents. So this is a part where we're normally in the auditorium and you can say, this is your community here where you can get to know one another and sort of have some common ground over what expectations are, parents to parents, house to house. Even if you don't really know the parent, reach out, be able to confirm that they're aware of the plans, confirm even whether there is going to be alcohol there. Be awake to talk to your child when they get home. You can tell a lot from when they're coming in. Are they happy? Are they sad? Does something seem off? Did they get home on time? All these sorts of things are going to give you a glimpse into how everything went that night. And then I sort of alluded to this, creating a community of parents with like-minded expectations. So parent peer pressure is really real as well. This is on the flip side. If you were hosting your child having some kids over, talk to your child in advance about the expectations for the party. Discuss who's going to be invited and stick to the guest list. Have plenty of food and other non-alcoholic beverages. Be there. I think we hear this a lot, like some parents will call and say, oh, are you going to be home during this? And parents will say, yeah. They'll be in their bedroom on, the second floor, and the kids will be in the finished basement. So not much supervision actually going on, even though the parent is going to be there. So get some clarity around that. And if you are the parent hosting, I'm not saying pop in all the time or hang out with your kids, but I am saying be around. So be the one that's refilling the snack bowl or passing through the room to get to the laundry room or things like that. Just be in the general vicinity so that you have an idea of what's going on. Don't be the cool parent for the wrong reasons. And again, parent peer pressure is real. So adding hurdles in all of this, the whole point of having clear expectations and coming up with consequences and things like that is to try to develop this stopgap in your child's mind where when they're faced with a really tough situation, your voice and your expectations can also be heard. So we want to buy them a little bit of time to say, is this the right decision for me? What are some of the pros and cons? So don't give passive permission by making it too easy. I think that's the big takeaway too. So sometimes parents don't realize that by not outwardly setting up hurdles or creating some obstacles for people, that their passive permission is kind of allowing it too. So hurdles can be rules or the expectations. And those are the things that we want. Like, we need them to be able to have a space to just stop and think. Parent assessment. So assessing your own behaviors. These are things that are just good to keep in mind for yourself. I'm not here to police your own behaviors or anything like that, but we talked about messages before, a lot of messages that we don't have control over, and how social media and news and other things influence our decision making, but seeing it in their own home is also a really important aspect of all this. So are you having a drink every day? Are you using alcohol or substances to self-medicate yourself? Closing thoughts. So these are just a few cute quotes. But while they're up, I also want to just make a quick comment about parents, students that have a two-parent household so parents that have two households that like divorced parents or kids that split their time between households. So even if personally you do not get along with the other parent, co-parenting on this realm is going to be really important. So there should be similar expectations across both households. Both should have open communication with one another about things like this. I think it's very easy for kids, even unintentionally, to split parents, like don't tell the other one this, or one parent being more lenient than the other. Now's not the time to do it. There's a lot that could be at risk here when we move forward thinking about underage drinking or substance use. This is where you both want to be on the same page and you both want to put whatever aside to be able to co-parent effectively on this realm. So if you have any concerns about your child or anyone for that matter, there are resources to try and get more support and information. So at MASIC, your child's guidance counselor, an administrator, or myself, I'm always available. And then community referrals. This is for anyone, other adults, people that just need help in general. 211 is the info line. They have really great resources to be able to give you. And then I put the Monroe Department of Community and Social Services number there. So that's how you would get in touch with someone. You know, we have options to do short-term counseling through social services, and we also make referrals all the time. Here's my contact info if you need it. And thank you guys for sticking around.
Hi, everybody. My name's Ann O'Doy. I'm a school counselor, school instructional leader at MASIC High School. I'm here to talk to you today about peer pressure. I'm going to speak briefly, and then you're going to hear from 5 of your fellow Panthers about what they've done to resist peer pressure. Behind me, you'll see a slide as I speak. Those are some significant points I feel are important to remember when experiencing peer pressure. Choose your friends wisely. Be your best self. Learn to say no when you're not comfortable in a situation. But you could read that as I share with you a little bit of what others have taught me about peer pressure. What did my parents tell me about peer pressure? Anne-Marie, just because everybody's doing it doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. Use your mind, use your common sense, make good decisions. They also told me to be patient. Patience. Good things will come to those who wait, and sometimes you have to sacrifice in order to get to the better thing that you're looking for. What did my middle school coach, my high school coach, my college coaches talk to me about in regard to peer pressure? If you're going to be all that you can be, you have to make great decisions about your body, about your health, about your mind, about your spirit. Make sure you're bringing people in that are positive for you, that are good for you. Friends lift you up. They don't take you away from something that you love and what's joyful for you. So stay on track, stay on the right road, because it will bring you all the things that you're looking for: your fulfillment, your passion, your happiness, your joy, and good friends. What did my teachers, my educators always tell me? Education is the most important piece of the equation. Work hard in school, challenge yourself. Not everything will be easy. There'll be a lot of things in life that won't be easy, but keep persevering. Ask for help when you need it. There'll be challenges, but you can rise to that occasion. And all of these important people, wise people in my world that shared this with me, also said, listen, we are all human. We all make mistakes. It's not about making the mistakes. It's about picking yourself up and saying, hey, maybe I shouldn't have done that, or I chose differently. I'm going to choose differently now to get myself back on track to what I'm dreaming about, what aligns with me and my happiness and my family's happiness and my friends. What's positive, what's good. Stay on that road. We're all human. We all make mistakes. We all wish we didn't do that. But the most important thing is to pick ourselves up and get back on track. Now I'm going to hand this over to our 5 MASIC fellow Panthers.
Hi, my name is Malachi Roy. I'm a junior at MASIC High School. One of the hardest things to do at a young age is to say no. When being peer pressured, you have to really think, is it worth jeopardizing your whole future over? People that peer pressure you don't really worry about your future or whatever you have going on. So stay true to yourself, because you have a really good chance to be something great in life.
Hi, my name is Julia Bakulis. I'm a sophomore here at MASIC, and peer pressure is something that we have all gone through or will eventually go through. Saying no in the moment is definitely a lot harder than saying yes, but if you choose your friends wisely, they will guide you down the right path and they want you to be successful.
So my name is JP, and I'm a senior at MASIC High School. Back when I was in 9th grade, it used to be hard for me to say no. Then over time, I realized that sometimes you just have to say no. If it's not for your belief, or just overall just wrong, there's no point of doing it, because overall, the next day it's not going to matter. It can only affect you for the worse.
Peer pressure is something that affects a lot of youth. It's something a lot of people have to deal with, especially in high school and surrounding alcohol. When talking about peer pressure, you need to take into consideration the people peer pressuring you. Real friends respect your boundaries and take no as no. People peer pressuring you don't respect your boundaries and aren't looking out for what's best for you. In my personal experience, when people peer pressure me, I know they're not my real friends and aren't looking out for what's best for me.
Hello, my name is Chris Tierney, and I'm a senior here at Massac, and I think peer pressure is a really important topic to talk about. You know, in 9th grade, it was really hard for me to look away from peer pressure, but, you know, the more grades you go through, the more you grow as a person, you learn how to avoid it. And, you know, that one decision can really change your life. And I know that all of you guys have really good futures ahead of you, so make good decisions.
Hi, I'm Ian Lowell. I'm one of the assistant principals here at Massac High School. And I'd like to talk to you today about the epidemic of vaping. Vaping is an epidemic with teenagers across our country, and unfortunately, Massac High School is not immune. Vaping basically delivers a drug through vaporized oils and mist. Often that drug is nicotine, that we often associate with cigarettes. Sometimes the drug can be THC, the active ingredient in marijuana. Here before me are some of the vapes that I have taken off of students at Massac High School just this year, and it's only November. As you can see, they don't look like typical packs of cigarettes. If you're looking for what does a vape look like, well, you know, oftentimes they do have a mouthpiece here where you're going to inhale the vapor. But they look kind of like pens. Some of them look like flash drives. This is a cartridge of nicotine oil that looks like you could plug it into your computer, but actually it goes into one of these vape pens where it's inhaled. And even the flavors are designed to appeal to kids. This one here is called Cherry Cola. Here we have Peach Ice and Frozen Banana. These vapes are unfortunately very popular in schools across the country with kids, and not too difficult to get, whether it be from a number of different places in town. And so while the police are cracking down on places that are selling to underage kids, you as parents and students should be aware that this is, if you come across something like this, that's what it is. This is a vape. Vaping has essentially replaced smoking, but it's not better for you than smoking. Smoking, as we know, releases chemicals through the smoke that enters the bloodstream through the small breathing sacs in the lungs. That's where oxygen is absorbed, but so then would the nicotine be absorbed through smoking. But we know from 100 years of research on the dangers of smoking that smoke creates tar that coats the lungs, leading to emphysema, COPD, and eventually lung cancer. It's been around, the research on cigarette smoking has been around since the 1930s, about 100 years. Vaping research has only really started since 2017. We don't have any longitudinal data, okay? Vaping transmits the liquid form of nicotine and THC through vaporized oils. These oils are made to be sticky and adhere to the lungs in those same breathing sacs. But because we don't have that longitudinal data, we don't really know what the long-term effects of this are. We know, though, that they're not good, that they are negative. A lot of these include heavy metals and these oils that go onto your lungs that stay there. This is not meant to be a scare tactic, but just to deliver you the facts and the information about vaping. What you're doing to your lungs when you vape is truly experimental, okay? But there are some data that we have already. There is already a disease that's recognized by the medical community called EVALI, E-V-A-L-I, stands for e-cigarette or vaping product use associated lung injury, and it's affecting a large group of people who are consistent vapors. They have also done experiments with lab rats where they've given them high doses of vape and seen the deterioration in their lung use. And so, as you need lungs to breathe, these kind of products are really hurting your ability to do that. Not only that, there are laws against vaping, especially in certain places like a school. Connecticut General Statute 19A-342A and B make it illegal to use or possess any of these devices underage. Okay, and so when we catch somebody on school property using or possessing any of these, there are school punishments, but there's also laws against these things too. It's also illegal to purchase these items underage. Law 53-344 B and C make it illegal to purchase underage. And you know, there are places in Monroe that have received fines for selling to underage kids. If you're found with one of these items outside of school, you might also be subject to fines or a juvenile review board hearing. Here you could be suspended, and depending on what is inside the liquid, if it does contain THC, that suspension can even be longer and more severe. There are two organizations, obviously, that we want to let you know about that are informational and prevent the use of these devices and others. One is the sponsor of tonight's event, ADAM, the Alcohol and Drug Awareness in Monroe program. Your children all got one of these in school this past week. In here are leaflets and information about the dangers of e-cigarettes and vaping, as well as other information that could be helpful. You can go on their website, adamofmonroeconnecticut.wordpress.com. You can also find them on Facebook at Adam of Monroe, Connecticut. And all that information is right here on the front of this packet, okay? In school, we also have Students Against Drunk Driving, SAD, and although they claim to be against drunk driving, they're also against other forms of substance abuse. And so you can get information from that. Our person for that, who you saw earlier in the video, is Mrs. Clark, and she is the advisor to the Massac chapter of SAD. So I hope that you understand a little bit more about what vaping is and some of the dangers associated with it. Our hope is that really, students can become more informed so they don't make poor decisions in using this and potentially life-threatening decisions. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Steve Swenson, and I'm the principal of Massac High School. I'd first like to thank all of our speakers for participating in the forum on underage drinking. While this is part of our health curriculum, it is also a very important message. I'd also like to thank Adam for their sponsoring of this event. While this event is virtual again this year, the group does an awful lot in the community and in cooperation with the school to get the message out on the importance of having the conversation with your kids. And that's my message to you is, while yes, this is part of our health curriculum and a requirement, it is also very important to have the conversation with your kids about what your feelings are and thoughts are on underage drinking. We all know the dangers and risks involved, and what we hope is that we never have to have the tougher conversations, which usually result from an incident that can be attributed to underage drinking. So please have the conversation so that we can prevent any tragedies from happening. As we all know, with drinking comes poor decision making, and that's not a good combination. The final requirement of completing the health curriculum requirement is for both the parents and the students to complete a survey. So there are QR codes on the screen, one for parents, one for students, so that you can complete the survey. Completion of the survey is required. And lastly, I would just like to make everybody aware that we do have resources available, both through the school and through the community. If you, a loved one, or anyone in your family needs them, please don't hesitate to reach out to the school, and we can connect you with the appropriate resource. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much again for Adam for sponsoring this event, and for all of our speakers. Have a good night. Thank you.